I've just measured the width of the bow, and you can see it's about 35 millimeters, which is a lot more than I wanted. I want it about maybe 30, maybe even down to an inch. So I've got to take a fair bit off the width, and it gives me the chance to decide the best side to take it off. So there's a couple of knots and things this edge, so if I take off this side it'll be advantageous. Also, this is the side with a sort of knot on and a thicker sapwood, and it will mean that this becomes nearer the centre of the bow. So I started ripping it off with a draw knife, and whoops, it took off a great big spall. I don't know if you can see that. Oh dear, panic, the bow's ruined. No, it isn't, that's not too bad. I just need to be careful. Use a rasp in that area and it will probably be alright. See, if I put the verniers on there, even at the narrowest bit, it's sort of about 30 millimeters, so I'm alright. But I'll put a big R on there, meaning use the rasp. So don't panic. So now we've got a nice selection of letters. We've got R for rasp and L for leave. It'll end up looking like a bit of alphabetic spaghetti, I expect. Anyway, I'm going to press on, take some off this edge, get it all clean and squared up, then heat treat it and have a go tomorrow. Before starting the heat treating, what I've done is I've run it on the belt sander to true up the sides and make them nice and flat, so that what I do is I clamp side cheeks onto the bow to keep the heat on. If I've got it nice and flat, those cheeks clamp on better. It also has got some of the wiggle and waggle out of the bow and helped me make sure it's pretty straight, because the narrower you go, the more likely it is to flip sideways. And you can see where I've taken quite a bit out. This spall is nowhere near as nasty looking, and I've probably still got tons of width. I'll stick the verniers on it. I'm getting it set up for heat treating, and what I've done is I've masked off the sapwood back with some masking tape. I've had people try and tell me it's not necessary, but for the cost of a couple of yards of masking tape, I'd rather not risk the delicate sapwood. You can see how much deflects we've got along the bow. So what I'll do is I'll pull this down, and you can see it takes very little force with my finger. So I'll just strap that down while I'm doing the heat treating, and that will help just take some of it out. And just help get the draw weight back up a little bit. I'm not going to put in reflex because it's counterproductive to some extent, I think, but that's a different discussion. I'll strap this down, put on the side cheeks, just give a, I'll just show you how I do the heat treating, but I'm not going to go on and on about it. Right, this is the heat treating setup. I've got this wooden jig that supports the heat gun, which I have going full blast. You can see how close the nozzle is to the wood. It's about 2 3/4 inches off the wood, but bear in mind the actual end of the heat gun's right up here. I use the fishtail to keep the heat on the wood. Some people like doing that, some don't, but the thing I do that I really think helps is these side cheeks. You can see how I've got them clamped on, and what that does is it directs the airflow along the bow. So while I'm heating this bit, the hot air is carrying on along here and warming up the next section, so you don't get short, sharp, dark bits where it's heat treated. You get a much more even layer of heat treating, and it speeds up the process. A warning about that: it's a very slow, very boring process. I'll give it about 8 minutes at the first point, because it takes a while to heat up the wood because it's stone cold. Then I move it about that far and give it 4 minutes, 4 minutes, 4 minutes, 4 minutes, 4 minutes, 4 minutes, move the cheeks along and carry on up to the end. So you get an idea, it takes a long time, and that's just for one limb. If you think you're going to do it in 10 minutes, you're mistaken. If you're not heartily sick and bored of it by the time you're finished, you're not doing it right. The big trick I find is have a kitchen timer going to go beep, beep, beep when the 4 minutes is up. Get yourself a book and sit down and read your book while it's going, because what you don't want to do is go indoors, watch telly, get engrossed in something and come back and find you've burnt right the way through your timber. Yeah, that's heat treated that first limb, and you can see the difference in colour. You can also see how it's pulled that limb tip down a little bit. I don't barely get a finger in there now, where it's about up there before. Just a tiny improvement. You can probably see down to the other limb, similar amount of deflects there. So when I've done that on limb, I'll have straightened it out a tad. It's interesting how the life of the tree gets sort of reflected and shows even as the years pass. See that groove there? That corresponds to this defect here. Despite being, you know, a good ½ inch and many years later, you can still see the sign of where it was. Blimey, the more I clean out this patch of rot, the deeper it gets. I think I might have to fill, there's a tiny little hole right in the middle. I might have to fill that with sort of epoxy and dust and then clean it up and then let in the V. To give you some idea of how deep that goes. There you go, sort of 13mm, or ½ inch in old money. Blimey. Just goes to show that what can look like a small feature, the more you clean it out, the worse it gets. This is interesting too. I mean, this wood is at least 4 years old. It was 2016 when I got it, and I think it had been cut quite a while before that. But the heat treating, it's pulled out these resins, and they're quite hard. I mean, that's how it works. It hardens up the resins within the wood, and the wood makes the wood a lot tougher, a lot harder on the belly side for compression. Anyway, I'll press on with this. I'll make the patch from the end that I sawed off the wood, so it'll be the same wood in the same orientation, and I'll harden it before it goes in. I'm going to shape my piece of wood to go in. It's just sort of a matter of doing it by eye and then looking at the fit. Now see how deep that's going. I can get my little profile gauge and stick it in there and see how that's looking. Profile gauge. Push that in hard. No, it's actually not bad, is it? Due to be a bit steeper at that nose end and going a little bit further yet, but we're getting there. I'm trying to get me a bit of wood fitting nicely. What I'll do is I'll saw it off to that pencil line, or maybe a bit above, leave plenty of spare wood. The patch was too thin to heat treat, it just started scorching, so I cleaned it up, slapped it in there with a load of tight bond. I'll put some yew dust from the belt sander in with a tight bond at the bottom to try and help fill any imperfections. I've got it clamped up good and hard, so got it it should be alright. That's a finished patch, cleaned up. Now I'll get it back on the tiller. That'll be tomorrow now, and it's 5:45 in the evening. I'm quite pleased with that. It's been done with a tight bond.